Good evening. My name is Shiela, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Shiela.
I've been sober since December 15th, 1984, and I am so grateful to be here finally, and I have many thank yous. I want to thank Maurice and the committee for inviting me to be here, and for picking me up at the airport with my friend Marty J., who's your speaker tomorrow night, and had a lot of laughs, and for Popeye, I mean, how many people get picked up and for dinner and go to dinner with Popeye, I mean, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Yep, he had a little spinach and he's fine now. And their spouses, I had to call Maurice's bride, and say, well, do you know is anybody coming to get me pretty soon, maybe? And, those little fun things that you do. And there's so many people that make a conference like this that it takes a lot of people to get it to come together. And, thank you for the dinner, and for, having me come here. It's such an honor and a privilege. And I want to thank Ann and her husband, Louis. They gave me a ride over here. It's always nice to get people that, take you places. They used to ask me to leave a lot, but now I get to go places. And, and I was really touched that she was so excited. Ann was so excited that her daughter was going to read tonight. What a special deal that is. I mean, you guys are in a really neat time in your life, and I hope you hold on to it and have so many special moments. And I get very touched, as you'll hear in my story. There's family recovery, and then there's family that part of family that doesn't get to recover, and that's alcoholism. And I think I've thanked everybody. I'm looking forward to hearing my friend Ajit tomorrow. He's one of my most favorite sick Al-Anon men. He likes us, and. Dick Martin's here. It's my sponsor's husband. He's here, and my sponsor talked not too long ago at a conference that's very dear to my heart, and she talked about having heartstrings, and that she had heartstrings to people and that's what kept her in Alcoholics Anonymous. She's been sober well over 35 years, 36, 37 years, and she's been sober a long time and done this a long time, and she's still on the firing line, of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she's a great lady and my light. She's one of the lights in this program that keeps me on this path. And her husband's here, and James, and it's so neat to meet new people. There's new people that I've met already, and another Al-Anon male. I don't know what's happening to Al-Anon, but anyway, it's good. I'm sure it's very good. They're just finally admitting how crazy they are, and because they like us. And so, I was born in Oklahoma, and that's enough to make anybody drink, really. But I get nervous sometimes when I go to Los Angeles, because I was basically raised there in Los Angeles, because I'm always afraid somebody is going to come up in the audience and tell me something I did wondrously at a party or something that I don't remember. But I was sitting there thinking, this is the East Coast. I don't know anybody in men's here. And because I didn't really do any drinking on the East Coast. Then I thought, there was that one guy from Connecticut. So if you're here, too bad. Sorry, and I really make amends that I was wrong. I probably meant it. If there's anything I can do to right it, don't tell me. I don't want to remember. And so I was born in Oklahoma, and I was born to two normal alcoholic parents. They did what alcoholic parents do. They got divorced before I knew they were ever married, and my father moved away I was like 2 or 3 years old. I have a younger brother who's 13 months younger than I am. He moved to California, and I lived with my mother. My mother was, I thought my mother was the most beautiful woman ever. I was so proud of her. I remember she would come and pick me up at kindergarten, and she was an RN, and she would back then they wore all white, and they wore the caps, and in the winter when it was cold, she'd wear this blue cape, and she was just beautiful. She had, real creamy skin and dark hair and light eyes and red lips, and I just thought she was a movie star. I mean, that's the days when you thought your mom was the most beautiful woman in the whole world, and I thought my mother was, and she would pick me up from school, and I was proud of her. I thought she was neat. She was a nurse and everything, and unfortunately, my mother had alcoholism. My mother was an alcoholic. I say that because she eventually died of alcoholism, and she tried to come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and she tried to get sober, and she just did not get sober. Not everyone that comes here gets sober, and stays. And she, unfortunately, her disease was well advanced. And one day we were at my grandmother's. My mother would bring us to grandmother's, and we'd take a nap, and she'd go away for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, months at a time. Sometimes my mother was reported missing many times because she drank and went places. I mean, that's what I did, and she did, and she would leave and she was a blackout drunk. And one time she left, and the social workers came and took us and put us into what would be one of many, many foster homes for my brother and I. And we lived in this foster home in California, in Oklahoma, and my father got wind of it in Oklahoma. And so when I was 7 years old, he came to Oklahoma and took us to live with him. He got custody of us because my mother just didn't show up for court, And one of the most magnificent things of this program is that because of the magnificent steps and people that came to my town and told their story, people that sat in my home group and sat with me at coffee, and my sponsor who have walked me through the steps, and the women in AA that have gone before me. I know in my heart today that my mother did the very best that she could. It's not something I just say or think. It's I really feel it in my heart because I've had a healing in that area as the result of these steps. And that's what our book promises in this, and she did. And I know my mother never ever meant that she would be left without children and we would be taken away from her. She just never showed up for court, and that's the very best she could do. And so we went to live in California, and I remember I loved California the minute I got on the plane to go there. I like going fast, and what better way to get there than a jet? And I got to California, and it was like we got on this freeway, and there were lights and big buildings, and it was a long way from Piedmont, Oklahoma, I'll tell you that. And I loved it. I loved the excitement and the adrenaline, and I liked it just from being a kid. And unfortunately, my father had married a nice Mexican lady. About 300,000 people picked us up at the airport. They were hugging and pinching and kissing, and I mean they loved us, and they were exciting. And then we went to grandma's. I think we went to my grandma's, and we had fiesta. I mean, it's like you eat and you drink and you cry and you fight and you make up and you eat and you drink. I love that, I like that kind of family. You can call it dysfunctional all you want. I think it's kind of fun personally, but I mean, I think fathers knows best. Like, I saw fathers knows best. Well, so did I, but I thought it was pretty boring compared to my family. It's like, no one ever called me kitten, that's for sure. And, and so, anyway, so we go to this, we go to this, we live in this house, and I love living there. I like them, and she's a nice lady that he married. And my brother and I, we started liking this. And unfortunately, my father has alcoholism. My father's got the disease of alcoholism, and she didn't have the benefit of Al-Anon. She didn't know that he had a disease. And one morning we woke up, and she was gone too. Now, it would turn out that I would not see my biological mother from the time I was 7 till I was 19. And it would turn out that I wouldn't see this woman again until I was 18, and that's called alcoholism. That's alcoholism. It affects children. It affects, blameless children and parents. It affects everyone. And so we go to Arizona, and we're living with my aunt and uncle. And then, we get this call one day, and I was, I was about 10 years old, and the most wonderful thing happened, and it would change my life forever, and I didn't even know it. My father would get sober at Alcoholics Anonymous, but I didn't have any idea it was going to change my life forever, but it did. And so we go back to California, and he has a sponsor, and unfortunately my father can't take care of us, and we're wards of the court, and we go live in yet another foster home. And we go to this foster home, and it's a black foster home, and my foster parents are black, and they have a son, and she keeps us 2 kids. Now, we're really only supposed to stay there a couple of weeks until I guess a white foster home opened up. We were just temporaries, but we didn't want to leave, and we ended up living there 3.5 years, and it was one of the most wonderful times of my life. I'm still in touch with that lady today, and I love her. And my foster father passed away a few years ago, and And I've tried to be of service to her. And, more kids would come to the foster home. The little Sioux Indian came, and Hilda was a beautiful Mexican girl, and she came to the foster home, and we just had all these kids start coming in, and we would sit down and eat lunch, and I always say this because I get such a visual when I think of us, and we'd be sitting around eating lunch, and it would be like a meeting of the Junior United Nations. We had plans, we were ready to go, and I didn't even know I was white for a while, and, really, it's not like we talked about it. I didn't know they were, it's like no one had color. I remember that. No one seemed to have color when I was young, and when I lived there, and I remember I went to school, and school was started like a month later after we moved there, and I came home, and I said, Mama, we started calling her Mom Betty, Mama, well, what's a honky? And she said, oh, that's just ignorant. She'd get so mad. And I said, this kid at school goes, you're a white honky. And I said, I am? I did not know that. I just used to make people so mad. And so I said, oh. And so I went home and told her. I said, did you know I was white? She said, really? And, we just had a neat thing. We go to Kmart, and she was always buying us socks and underwear. We had them for every day of the week, and she was really always, her house was spotless. She was a neat lady, and she bought us clothes. We didn't have hardly anything when we got there, and she'd buy, out of her own money, she'd buy us clothes, and we'd be all at Walmart, and we'd call her, all of us called her Mom, and people looking at her really strange, like, this lady's been very busy, she's got a little rainbow behind her, Mama, she goes, quit begging, and she was just so funny, and, that was good, those were, and when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I felt so different, but, thank God for the steps and inventories, and a different way to look at things. My perception of reality has changed. We had good times. We had a good life there. I wasn't being harmed. It was good. And so we lived there for like 3.5 years. And my father was getting sober in AA, and he had a sponsor, and he came and visited us all the time. And now other kids lived there, and I don't remember ever seeing Myron's family. In fact, he's 33 years old, and his family still's never come to see him, and she's been his mother all these years. And he was 18 months when he came to us, but my dad would come, and the rest of the kids kind of started looking forward to him coming too. He'd give us a quarter for allowance, and he'd give all the kids a quarter for allowance, and you had to get a second job for all our allowance. We used to laugh about that, because he was everybody's dad, and I started having some sort of feeling toward him that was maybe he's not so bad. My father and I never got along. It was horrible. He just wasn't my mom, and I punished him for many years for not being her because I loved her so much. He never really did anything that bad. We just had a very volatile and violent relationship, and I had a terrible part in it as we grew up. And he met a nice lady in AA, and they got married. She had 2 kids. He had 2 kids. It was not the Brady Bunch, I can tell you that. We were really sick, and nothing did not work out. And so then we went down the street to live with his wife's sister, and we used to, now I haven't gotten drunk yet. God knows I need to, but I haven't yet. I'm on my way. Now I've drank though. I've had sips of beer, and I remember I've been sipping drinks since I was little, But my first drunk is when I was 15 years old, and this guy said, everybody was going to the prom, and they were like, my aunt had 4 children of her own. She was a single mother, and her mother lived with her, and she took my brother and I in. What a neat lady. And so she said, this guy goes, well, you don't have a date, not have a date. You want to go to the prom? I'm like, oh, how romantic, sure. And so we go to really. And so we go to the prom, and he comes over, and my aunt first takes me to get the dress by myself. Now, she's got all these kids. 5 out of the 6 are teenagers. And they were all going to the prom, and she takes me by myself because she wanted it to be really special. Just me going to get my prom dress. Of course, I see that looking back on it, and at the time I'm too self-centered. Me. And so, but I'm kind of in trouble already. I'm like, I like those guys that have vans. Do you remember don't get in a van? Oh, God. Anyway, she'd say, you just shouldn't get in a van. And I thought, why? It's just, I just don't. And, he had evil, wicked, mean, and nasty on his bumper sticker as a bumper. That could, it's kind of upsetting Aunt Jo. And I'm doing that, and I'm smoking cigarettes, and I'm just kind of edgy, I'm hanging out. I like the guys that are rough, and, I like bad boys, and I do, I know it's bad, and so anyway, and so she's seeing this kind of behavior. One of her daughters converted to be a Mormon. I mean, these girls were good girls. I mean, they were so good, and I was so bad, and so I'm in trouble. So I think, it's time to do. I'm the kind of alcoholic that I push you right, just right when you're ready to kill me. And then I'll do something really wonderful. And then you love me all over again. I know when you're about to, like, 86 me. And so it's time to do something good because, it's not like I'm the family. I mean, they could ask me to leave at any time. And so I think I pick out this kind of low-cut, little tight, cute, little long yellow dress. She picks out this giant green dress. It was so big, and it had this accordion neck that went up like this and a big ruffle, and like big puffy sleeves and an empire waist that buffed out. It was horrible, and it giant green flowers all over it. And it was just, I put that on, and I thought, oh, this is not good. And she goes, oh, I love that dress on you. You look beautiful. And I'm like, oh, my God. But I need to do something, and so I get the dress. And then she says, will you go to my hairdresser? Now, nobody goes to their aunt's hairdresser, okay? My God, this is the mid-'70s. You wore your hair long and straight, maybe curled at the end on a special occasion, but you did not have your hair done. And so, of course, I say yes because and her daughters were, hindsight's 20/20. Her daughters were not going to the hairdresser. Her mother, they weren't going. Why would I do that? So I go, and the lady says, how would you like your hair? And I said, I want like a little bit up and a little down, Well, then she curled my hair, had me under the dryer for 2 weeks. My ears are still like melted a little bit, and dryers scare me today, and so I said, okay. And so then she starts piling my hair, and my hair turned out this big. And then it kept going like a football, And my aunt comes running in, and she goes, oh, you look so beautiful. And she's got baby's breath. Now, they're adding insult to injury. They're putting this baby's breath all in my hair, So, me and my hair, we go out to the car, and I get in, and I go home, and I put on the green dress, and I look in the mirror, and I look like a bush in bloom, I'm ready for the prom, And so, and but see, I had this great idea of me at the prom. I'm walking down a spiral staircase, and he's beautiful. We lived in a one-story place, okay? I'm always having visions of things that aren't. I love to just be up here, and I just wanted to be pretty and beautiful, and I look like a goof at the prom. And then my date, 3 days before the prom, decides, he needs money for the prom. And so he bites the head off a live frog. Right. At school, he took Sister Margaret's frog, her favorite frog out of biology, and I hope he makes amends, and he bites the head off of it and spits it out in front of everybody at school. And I don't know if I might have been in the office or so. I was in trouble probably. I was doing, and everybody comes running up. Sheila, the guy you're going to the prom with just bit the head off a live frog. And I thought, could anything ever go right just once? This guy has bit the head off a live frog. So he comes to pick me up, and my foster mother comes. My dad lives down the street. I used to come home from cheerleading practice and drive by, and I'd wave, and girls would go, who's that? And I go, that's my dad. And they go, your dad lives down the street from you? And I said, yeah, doesn't yours? I mean, it's, the big book says the abnormal becomes normal, and that was our normal life. That was so normal, and it was easier for my father and I. We got along so much better when he lived down the street. And so my dad comes from down the street, and people are taking pictures, and I don't want my dad to know that my date has bit the head off of a live frog. Of course, I want him to think he's a nice guy, and because the way I was with my dad was like, love me, love me, love me, but I do everything I can to push you away. I do everything I can to upset you or hurt you, but then it's your fault and you don't love me. And I played that horrible game with him for many years until through inventories and stuff, I got to look at my part and see where I was wrong, what my part in our relationship and my resentment was. And thank God, because there was so much healing after that. And so my little cousin Kelly comes in, and he's little, and he comes in and he goes, are you the guy who bit the head off a live frog? Like it's his hero. I'm mortified, and my dad goes, what? And my dad was a real big man. I used to think he was a cross between John Wayne and Popeye, and then Popeye calls me. We got Popeye on the thing here. But he was like, what, and his eyes kind of glaze over, and I go, it's time to go. So we go off to the prom, and he's got he doesn't have the right car. Everyone got like a really cool car from their aunt or their grandmother. They really need, always picked you up in a cool car, He had a Dodge Dart, and he was trying to tell me it was a classic. Now, it is today. It wasn't then, It was old. He goes, watch this, and he'd push a button and the car started. And I'm like, oh, great, I go, is my mother the car? But, it was like horrible, And so we get to the prom, and he's got champagne in the car, and he doesn't even have glass. He's got plastic, and you're trying to look all cool and elegant lady, and that little thing falls off all the time. I hated that. And I'm trying to look all elegant, my little deal, and I'm trying to put it up, and I'm trying to drink and look all like the ladies in the movies, and I just had some champagne, and it was no big deal. We went to the after parties. Oh, I love the after parties. Let me tell you what. And people came up and they were like mixing me drinks, tequila sunrises and screwdrivers and margaritas, and they were making all in champagne in my little glass. Now, I know about alcoholism. I know about Alcoholics Anonymous. I babysit your children while you're at meetings. We have parties while you guys are gone. Ha ha. And, anybody get nervous tonight? We used to have big parties. I knew that my dad had committed meetings, and he was there unless he was dead. And we used to, I know about Alcoholics Anonymous, and I know what a blackout is before I had one. I knew what a blackout was. I know a lot about alcoholism at age 15. I've lived it. And I've also seen recovery at this time, 5 years of it. And I could still justify and rationalize in my mind why I wasn't an alcoholic and wasn't going to be an alcoholic. Still could justify and rationalize. So they kept making me these little drinks. I kept thinking, I'm not going to get drunk. This is not a big deal. So I had 150 of those puppies, and let me tell you what happened. My hair got long and straight. Those flowers flew off my dress, and frog lips started looking really good. Yeah. That kind of good. It was just, and I love what Clancy says, that this is a disease of perception, because I want to tell you, when I put that magic stuff inside of me, everything changes. My perception of nothing's really changed. Everything's the same. But my perception of reality changes. It made it all right. It made it all better. I was okay. I felt good. You even look better. When it can change my world, why would I not drink that stuff? And I always thought alcohol was bad. I always kept thinking bad, because bad things happen when people that I love drink alcohol. Bad things did happen. This was very, very good that was happening to me. It was very good. I liked the way it made me feel. And it talks about it in the doctor's opinion that, alcoholics drink essentially for the effect produced by alcohol. I love the way it makes me feel. And so, I did not wake up the next morning and become morning drunk. I didn't start having a morning drink. I just partied. I just went to things. I partied, got out of high school. Everyone was happy. I graduated. And, and I went on and I worked and I became a waitress. And I had this love. I had my high school sweetheart broke my heart. It just broke my heart in two. He was playing in the Super Bowl, and he told me he sold my ticket to somebody because he needed the money. He was in college, and he picked me up later, and he never showed up. Is that not the saddest story you've ever heard? I wrote about it. I'm fine now. It's on my amends. Don't worry. On my resentment list. And so, it was just nothing. I couldn't seem to come out of whatever this was. And my self-worth and self-esteem, of course, is nothing because I don't do worthy things, and I don't act esteemable. I'm not doing esteemable things, and I'm not doing things in my life that are going to make me feel like a lady. And that's what I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous. If you want self-esteem, do esteemable things. Oh, it's so simple. That is so simple. She didn't tell me, my sponsor never sent me home to do affirmations. She said, why? You won't believe them anyway. I'm like, you're right. Because I need an action. My sponsor talks about it, and I love what she says. You cannot think yourself into right action. You have to act yourself into right thinking. And that is still true today. I don't care how long I'm here. It will always be true. I will have to act myself into right thinking. And so, I'm just going through life, and I meet, I have these, I love what Vinoy says. Vinoy is a great lady to me in Al-Anon. She's my stepmother today. I really love her. She has been very dear to my heart, and she talks about her hymns, her majors and minors, you know. So there were minors and then some of the majors, and I met this guy, and I thought, you know, maybe I ought to settle down because I'm not settled down. So he owned a bar. And so he asked me, he said, will you marry me? And I thought, free beer and pool the rest of my life. I do. And so we got married. And I, you know, I really was going to try to be a good wife, and I didn't know how to be a wife. I don't know how to be anybody's wife. And so, you know, of course, I'm immature, and I have immature, I'm just an immature person. I don't know how to react to life. I have no correct reaction to life. Life affects me so strangely, and I react strangely. And I have no tools for living, but I have booze, and that's the only tool I've got. And so what happened was that marriage did not last. You know, it didn't. We were married maybe 6 months. I was still sending thank you notes out to people for gifts when we got divorced, and you know, I know it's just bad. And so I'm out running again, and it seems like if there's at that point in my life, what's happened to me was. I saw my mother at one time when I was 19, and she wasn't that beautiful lady anymore. Alcoholism takes its toll on women. It talks about it in our book, and she looked old, and she was sickly, and she'd lost an eye, and she'd had infections from drinking, and directly from drinking. And she was very, very ill, and she lived in like a place that Social Security took care of her. And the people there were older than her, and they took care of her because she was so weak and sick. My mother was only 48 years old. I figured it out. I did the math. I didn't realize for years she was only 48 years old. And people that were 70 were taking care of her because she was so sickly that lived there. I got a call one day. I was my husband, this guy and I were divorcing practically, and I get a call that my mother is dying, and she's in Dallas, Texas, and I go to Dallas, Texas and live and stay with her for a while, and I walk in, and the nurse is so nice, a sweet nurse named Mary, and she says, I need to tell you what's going on. This is kind of gonna shock you. And I looked at her and I said, honey, I've been through so much in my life, this is gonna be no big deal. And that's where I had gotten. I had bitterness and anger and hardness and just cynical. And she said, well, okay. And I walked in, and my mother was yellow. She was yellow like mustard, and she had tubes running in and out of her, and she was bloated and swollen. And if you've ever seen anybody dying from this disease and cirrhosis, it's a horrible way to go. It's a horrible death. And she was in a coma, and she didn't even know I was there. And I just hated my life, and I hated her life, and I hated the God of my understanding. I thought, what kind of God would take a mom from her kids? I loved my mother. Why would God do this? Why would God allow this? What kind of God makes it so that she won't never get sober? She was a beautiful nurse at one time. What kind of God would not restore this woman to her life? What kind of God would do this to my whole life? I don't get my mother, who I love. And I just felt so down. And my aunts and uncles came to visit. They came in and they came to visit her. And we were sitting outside, and the nurse came out, and she said, you need to come in here right now. And I did. And I walked in, and my mother was sitting up. And we have had no words. And she said, the first thing she said to me is, will you forgive me? And I said, yes. And I am so grateful today that I said yes. And I've had the tools that I've received in Alcoholics Anonymous is the true forgiveness that I've had with her. But I said yes that day. And we had 3 really neat days together. And then I went back to California because they didn't know how long she could be like this, 6 weeks or 6 months. And I needed to go to work so I could make some more money to come back and visit her. And she died 2 days later. My mother died alone in an indigent hospital by herself. And it always broke my heart. Until a lady one time in a meeting came to me and said, Sheila, I'm sure God always sends somebody. God himself probably was there right there, and she wasn't alone. How nice that someone would say something like that to me. To give me a little bit of hope, to put something in my mind other than the ugliness and the pain. You have always done that for me in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the neat thing is that I want to receive it today. That's the neatest part about this. You have given me tools in light of your experience, as it says in our book, and I have wanted to receive them. And that has been just, I think, one of the biggest things in Alcoholics Anonymous. So many times I work with people and I give them the light of my experience, but unless they want it, it will never, ever come to pass. Unless they pick those tools up and do something, it will never come to pass. And I really did want that. I wanted that when I got here. And so I went back to California and I called my father, who my father, I go months without, he didn't know where I was half the time. It was just awful, and I was divorcing this guy, and he was upset about that. It was just terrible, and I just said, Dad, would you help me bury Mom? I don't want to go by myself. I don't want to do this alone. And my father, he called his sponsor, and his sponsor was Clancy. He was my dad's sponsor for many, many years, for his entire sobriety. And he called Clancy, and Clancy said, go and be with him. And he was a good father. He didn't say, this is going to make me feel funny. Well, of course it's going to make him feel funny. I'm going to feel uncomfortable. Well, of course he felt uncomfortable. He went and saw his ex-in-laws, and they thought it was all his fault. I mean, yeah, he was in a pretty uncomfortable situation. But because of the actions in this program and doing things that he didn't want to do, he knew that, Alcoholics Anonymous, and Dick says this all the time, Alcoholics Anonymous works best when it's inconvenient. Yeah, try it. God, it's easy to come and look good, but, if somebody wants you out in the middle of the night, forget it, And the thing is that it was inconvenient. He was taking time and money and time away from his job and AA, and he did. And he went with my brother and I, and we buried my mother. I remember standing around her grave and at that day that we buried her, and I thought, this is the first time I ever really remember us all together, and I think she would have liked that. I got to honor her through my father helping me. And I never gave him that. I don't even remember if I ever said thank you. Not until I got sober. I just expect things. I don't ever think this might be hard for you. Of course I do now because you've given me that. But I didn't think that was a hard deal for him to walk through, and he did it anyway, and I didn't even appreciate it. Oh, God, I felt so bad. I felt so bad when I got sober with those things. Thank God for step 8 and 9. Thank God. And so I divorced him because it's probably his fault anyway. So, I just go on reckless abandon, and I find, I start doing cocaine, champagne, that whole thing. And I am an alcoholic, truly an alcoholic. But drugs are just a part of my story. I like anything that's going to make me go fast. I'm not a really go slow kind of person, and I like mixing fast drugs because I can drink longer and not go into blackout as soon. I mean, I just love that, and that's what I did. And I got very, very ill, physically ill doing this, and mentally and spiritually very, very sick and emotionally. And I went out one night because I go to the bars, and I met this him. And, I went up to him and I said, hey, I was drunk, and I really remember part of this. And I said, hey, lover boy, you want to dance? And he said, no. Well, I got to have him. I've got to have him. Come on. That is so sick. Okay. So he said no, and I had to have him, and I did. And, hello. And so I found him later on, and he found me, and he started taking kind of care of me. I kind of like that. And he set me up on this car because I was really kind of dizzy or something. And the next thing I remember is I just fell flat on my face, and he picked me up, and we spent the next 2 weeks together. And that's how I date, and that's dating, that's my idea of dating before sobriety. And, we fell madly in lust and love, or whatever you want to call it, and do the crazy dance, and, oh, it's just crazy. Well, we start being together all the time and all that, and I got pregnant, and he didn't want to be, and for some reason I want to have this baby, and I decided to make a decision to have this baby, and I was really going to be a good mom. I was going to do everything right. I thought maybe this will do it. Maybe this will get me together. Maybe I'll stop drinking so much. I won't do drugs. And, and I wish I could stand here and tell you that fixed it for a while. And you know what? It just didn't. I drank and I used drugs while I was pregnant. Now, that is not a pretty part of my story. It's one of the parts I hate probably the most. And my sponsor, Peggy, has really helped me with that, because it says in our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, that you lose the choice. And she said, Sheila, you lost the choice. Unfortunately, you were pregnant. And that's the way it is. You lost the choice. You didn't have a choice. And, she really helped me, because I always kind of thought I know women in AA that are really bad alcoholics. They're drunks, there's no doubt. But they stopped drinking when they were pregnant. And I just felt so, one more time, even here, I started separating myself from you. And I cannot do anything that separates me from you. I separate myself. I cannot do that. And, and she just said, maybe at that point, maybe they just were not at the jumping off point yet. You were there. You cannot compare yourself to anyone else, and I felt very badly about that. And the longer I'm sober and the more right actions that I've taken toward my children is the thing that has helped me feel better about me. One more time, it was action. And so I have this baby boy, and his dad left in my 8th month of pregnancy, and I think, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And that's how I felt most of my life. What's wrong with me? There's something so unlovable about me. And what is that? I just feel so unlovable, and there's like this, it's like something in me that's dark and ugly, and I was really, really had a hard time with that, and I just felt like no one would ever love me, and I am so grateful to get to live today and feel loved and know that I'm loved and able to love. When I got to this program, I didn't want to love anybody because I was so hard-hearted and cynical. I didn't want to love you because I didn't want any more of that. That is for the birds. That is for weak people. Oh, I love you. That's so sick. Don't tell me you love me either when I first am sober, because I'm going to kill you. Well, Sheila, we love you. No, you don't. Get away from me. I'm going to kill you. I hated that. People, we love you. Oh, please, stop. You don't even know me. Just wait. You won't love me. Give me 10 minutes. I today I say that to people. Today I actually say that to people. That's amazing. I don't know how many years I went without telling people I love them. Many, many years. Many years, because I placed myself in a position to be hurt by people, and they retaliated, seemingly without provocation. I believe that's step 3 in the big book. And when they retaliated, I didn't never look at my part, and I always thought I was just unlovable. But I had done things to upset people. Well, so I have this baby, and I'm going to be the best mom in the whole world. I'm never going to drink. I'm not going to use. I'm not going to do anything anymore. I'm going to shape up. I'm going to start my life over. I'm going to learn to bake cookies. He has no teeth, but I'm going to learn to bake cookies. I am, alcoholics, boom, we're great at. Aren't we great starters? Oh, yay, boom, we die. I'm a terrible finisher. I'm an absolutely terrible finisher. Bob Bazant's, the first time I ever heard him talk, he said I'm a great starter and a lousy finisher, and I just totally identify with that. And so what happened is that he fixed me for about 2 weeks. Then I'm off to the bars, and I'm running, I'm gunning, and I'm going crazy. And I meet this guy, and he's a Marine, and I thought, well, my God, they take care of the whole country. Surely he can handle me. The few and the proud. Hello. Come on. And I'm always looking for the knight in shining armor. There are none. Sorry, girls. And they're just not. That's too much to put on one person, my gosh. So we meet, we meet, and I run off to Oceanside with my baby and him, and we go live there. And, of course, that doesn't work out. That's nothing. I'm always looking for something out here to fix me in here. And it didn't work. And one more time I placed myself in a position to be hurt, and bad things happen to people that do that. They just do. They just do. When I place myself in a position to be hurt, things happen, and I get hurt. I make bad decisions. I have terrible judgment. And so what happened was I end up living on the floor because we break up, and me and my son and I we are living on the floor at this girl's house. I'm a manicurist. I work in the day, and I'm also a cocktail waitress at night, and this is what I'm doing. And I'm doing lots of drugs, and I'm drinking lots of alcohol. And I would pretend that I would come after you cocktail waitress 1 or 2 in the morning. I didn't always work the late shift. And then when the house would start waking up at 6:30, 7 o'clock, I would pretend to be getting up. That would be when I was coming in. I was just coming in. And I'd, pretend I was sleeping and then get up. And I did this forever. Lived crazy. And one morning, she caught me coming in and said, I know what you're doing. And she said, if it weren't for that baby, you would not live here. And she was a neat lady. Her name was Karen. And she was a nice lady, one more nice person in my life. And she said, I know your mother's dead, but you need to call your dad or somebody. She said, I wish you could see what you look like. You have like sores on your legs, and one of your eyes is incredibly dilated, and the other one is like a pinpoint. She said, I think you're about to have a stroke. And I didn't even realize how physically sick I had gotten myself. She said, I'm really scared you're just going to die, and I don't know what to do. I don't know your family. I don't know what to do with your baby. She said, you've got to do something. And I called my dad, and, I never called my dad because I tried to get sober at 19. I was sober 9 months in the Pacific Group, and, I just really, really, really didn't think I was an alcoholic. I'm not powerless over alcohol. And the pain of being sober got to be too great, and the steps and the actions in AA that I was not doing did not come in and take its place. And so what happened was I drank again, and I never talked to my dad about anything because I think he'd know or say something or throw a big book at me or do something. And so he was like at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, they calling him, and I did. And he was doing a fifth step with a sponsor in the back room, and he had moved to Norman, Oklahoma at the time, and his wife said, well, and she's a black belt Al-Anon. Now, when it's the end, okay, do not, if you get it hooked up with the black belt Al-Anon, you can just forget it, honey, it's over. Might as well just throw it in and the gig's up, because what I said to her was, I'm gonna walk the streets and put Brad in a foster home because I can't live this way anymore. Now, I didn't give her any specifics or details, and she didn't ask. And she said, well, please don't do anything right now. Wait till your dad gets out of doing his fifth step, and I'll have him calling you the minute he's out of the bedroom. I promise. Please don't do anything. And I made some sort of confession. I made some sort of cry for help. And then I left and went and got drunk. Well, that's what I do. The roommates watched the baby, and I went out drunk. My father got in touch with me the next day, and he said to me, we just had bad words like we always do. It's just awful. And he said, I'll send you a one-way, non-cashable, non-refundable, non-anythingable ticket to Oklahoma and to come to Oklahoma. And I remember thinking, what a loser I am. I'm going to Oklahoma. Now, I'm a beach girl. Now, come on, and I'm going to go to Oklahoma. And so my dad sent me the ticket, and I get on this plane, and I've got this baby, and I've got a box with twine around it, and an old beat-up suitcase, and that's what I have. That's all I have. That's what I've come to in my life, and I hate myself. And I remember I got to Oklahoma, and I drank all the way there on the plane. They said, and they was touchdown at that time. They should stop in Tulsa and then go to Oklahoma City. And they said we were in Tulsa, and I started ordering coffee. I need some black coffee because I know I've got to act. I got to be something by the time the Al-Anon AA brigade's about to pick me up. Jeez, This is every alcoholic's worst nightmare. Let me tell you what. Okay. So my dad, the kind of relationship I want to tell you that my father and I had when I first got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, my dad couldn't even go to the airport and pick me up. It was too painful. I was too painful. I broke his heart far too many times. And his sweet wife said, why don't you go to your meeting? It was his committed meeting. She said, why don't you go to your meeting and I'll pick her up? She brought another Al-Anon along for support, And they brought two, honey, and they were both black belts. And they picked me up, and unbeknownst to me, they just cared. They didn't yell at me. They didn't say, you smell like booze. They didn't say anything, and I know they knew. But they didn't say anything to me. And they picked me up, and they picked up my son, and they loved on it. Gave him a bath. And how do you repay that? How do you ever repay that? I can never, ever, ever repay that. That is just such a sweet thing. And for some reason, I started noticing things. And then my dad, it's like they said, it's a big joke in our group now. I said, your dad washed every cup and ashtray like a couple of times. He didn't want to go home because I was there. How scary. Going home to the monster daughter, oh God, and it's just, I really was. I was such a terrible daughter. And so he comes in, and, I haven't seen my dad. He saw Brad when he was like 3 months old. He came out to California just to see him. And, I didn't even tell my dad I was pregnant with him. Someone sent him a letter when I was 5 months pregnant. I never told him. What a terrible thing. He was the last person to know. I didn't even tell him. I didn't have the guts to tell him. And so he hadn't seen him since he was 6 weeks old, and he's like 18, 19 months old. And I don't even hug him. I just, hi. I don't know what to do. We have no love. We have no way to communicate, hug, or anything. And so we just start that out. And I lived there for a while, and then I got to get in a fight because I got to leave because I'm crazy. I'm out of my head. I'm going to Al-Anon meetings, for God's sake. They say, in that house, you got to go to something. So I thought, well, Al-Anon's drink. I'll go to Al-Anon. So I went to Al-Anon. And it was really hard. I mean, I really do. I have, I know. I was around drunks long before I drank. I know I have some Al-Anonism crazed in my head, I'm sure. However, I used to say things to women after the meeting that would be crying over a him or a him crying over her or whatever it was. Or I'm sad or worried about my child. I go, oh, have a drink and a Quaalude. They'll be home. That is not normal behavior. That's not normal. And they would look at me in that, that look, and the Al-Anon look. And Ajit will tell you all about it tomorrow. I love that. I won't even go into it. And so, I don't know. It was like I just had to get out of there. And so I got drunk. I got drunk one night with my Al-Anon sponsor, actually. She said, well, we're not alcoholic. We can go have a drink. And I said, well, by God, we can, and there is a God. And I started believing in God a lot. I thought God was great. So I went with her, but every time she would go to the bar to get a drink, I would order a couple of shots, shoot them before she got back. I mean, I was blitzed, and she had no idea how I got blitzed. She kept saying, she only had 2, maybe 3 glasses of wine. Ha ha. And the way that, what happened was that we went to, eat at a restaurant or eat at a drive-through place, and I, tore the door down in a crazy rage. I, tore a bathroom door off. And that's not normal behavior. She said, I don't think that's social drinking, to her Al-Anon sponsor. And she said, no, and you knew what you were fooling with, and she got in trouble. So they told, and her Al-Anon sponsor happened to be my stepmother. It's so incestuous. And so I was caught. I'm in trouble. And my dad has a long talk with me, and he has a tear in his eye, and he said, there's nothing I can do. But I will not let Brad go through this, and if you continue on this way, he said, I will not allow my grandchild to go through. I'm so sorry for your life, Shiela. I'm so sorry you had to live the way you and your brother. And there's nothing I can do to change that. But I cannot stand by and allow you to do the things to Brad that I did to you. I can't do it. And he didn't yell and scream. My dad's a fit thrower. He is a fit thrower. You want a Coke? He's like that. Want to go to lunch? He's done. And everybody else is, whoa, we're all killed. And he's all, whoa, you want to have a Coke? My dad's a fit thrower. He just throws a fit and then it's done, But I used to just be so wounded and dramatic and when I came to have a different way of looking at him, it just worked out. He's a growly bear. He was a growly bear. He growled all the time. He always growled at me. I could make his neck, these veins stick out better than anybody in his neck. I just loved that. I was kind of proud of it, actually. And tell me I didn't have a part. And so, what happened for me was I moved out, and my dad talked to me, and I got very drunk one night in my apartment with my roommates, and I went into a blackout, and I left my child with them. And the next day I came to, and I had my clothes on and everything, and he wasn't in my room with me, and I couldn't find him. And it was December 15th, 1984. I started drinking on the 14th until way into the morning, and I couldn't find my baby. And it's very, very cold in Oklahoma on December 15th, 1984. It's very cold, and I thought he had gone outside and froze to death, and I'm running around, I'm screaming, I'm crazy. My roommate, I checked the rooms and everything, and he wasn't in there. And my roommate came out and said, what is wrong with you? What are you doing? You were crazy. What were you doing? Where were you going last night? I have mud all over me. I could have died of the, frostbite. And so what those questions people ask you, and you have no recollection, and you can't remember, and you're frightened. And I said, I can't find Brad. And, I never want to forget what that day was like. And I look up, she said, he's right in here. And he had been snuggled under her comforter, and when I opened the door to peek in, all I could see was her. I couldn't see him. She said, he came in my room last night because you weren't here, and he was afraid. Oh, he was afraid. God, how many times have I been afraid when my mom was gone? And I always said I'd never do those things, and I did them just like that. I just became that same thing. It's such a vicious cycle. And I saw that little baby, and he was waddling down. He was about 20 months old at this time, and he's coming down the hall, and he has yellow jammies with the feet in them, and he's so beautiful. He's so beautiful. And he puts his hands up, and he's, Mom, and he's happy, and he loves me. And I hug him, and I said something to the effect of, Mama's going to get help. And because some of you are so selfish and self-centered, and some of you are not selfish and self-centered, after you get here a while and you come to meetings and you notice that there's, we can spot us, And this gal in AA, she would see me all the time, and the women in AA started handing me their phone numbers. They spotted me. They could just see it. They just knew. And they just took the time to give me a phone number. And I called that phone number that morning, and she wasn't home, but her husband was. And he said, I know more about you than I should. I'm good friends with your dad, Shiela. He goes to our group. And he said, why don't you come over? And I said, okay. And he said, are you drunk now? And I said, no, I'm just real hungover. He said, well, get your over here, and I will. And I did. And I said, the roommates are like, we'll watch your baby go. And I went to their house, and he sat me down with a big book and a cup of coffee and and a kitchen table, and he told me, Sheila, you never have to drink again if you don't want to. You never have to feel this way again if you don't want to. And everything will be all right. And from that day to this, it has been all right. It's just like one alcoholic working with another. We didn't get into anything big and heavy. He just said, I want you to go to the meeting tonight. I want you to do this. Now, I am ready to die. I am full of remorse and guilt and pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization. That's what that morning means. That, to me, is that morning. And then he says, you need to come to the meeting tonight. And I said, but, and I love what Bob says. He says, an alcoholic loses everything, house, home, kids, wives, everything. And he said, and the first thing they get back is their opinion. Now, 15 minutes ago, I'm falling apart, and please help me, and and he says, you need to come to the meeting tonight at our group. And I said, I really need to get my own AA. I need to get my own AA. That group's really nice and everything, but I need something a little, not so structured, not so big booky, something with a few more men in it. I think I know what I know and I need and I want. And he said, Sheila, that is a really good group, and that's exactly what you need. You need structure. You need discipline. Even though your dad goes to it, it will not be a big deal. There are plenty of meetings that he doesn't go to at that group. You can go to this group. And I said, I'm really going to try to find my own way in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't want to be his daughter. And, it was just, aren't I special? So about 7:15, I've already talked myself out of the meeting and into going out and playing. I'm already talked out of it by 7:15. So horrible. And when your roommates look at you and say, are you going to that AA meeting tonight? And you say no. And they look at you and say, we'll watch Brad. Why don't you go? When your drinking buddies want you at an AA meeting, you might want to take a look at your drinking. That's just a suggestion. And so I went to the meeting, and I'm set out to find my own Alcoholics Anonymous. Problem being is that I don't know Norman, Oklahoma that well, nor have I been to any other AA meetings anywhere, and the only AA group I knew was that one. I had no idea where any other AA groups were. So I come to the meeting, and it was December 15th, and it was very cold out, and it was Christmas. And my dad was sitting, and he came in, he walked in, and I was standing there, and he shook my hand. He was very shocked to see me, but he was trying to act as normal as a man could act. He sees his daughter in an AA meeting, and it hadn't been one. And he says, hello, how are you, daughter? Nice to see you. And he walked off, and, he was so cute. Oh, he was. And then somebody else was like, oh, hi, and the meeting starts, and I sit in the back, because that's where, I'm new. I don't want to sit up front. Only the healthy people want to sit up front. They want to hear. I'm going to stay in the back and be very cool. And they said, are there any newcomers in their first 30 days of sobriety? To get to know you, not to embarrass you, would you please raise your hand? Well, I think that's just goody-goody, goofy stuff, and I'm not doing it. And then you know how they're looking at you? Like the whole meeting, And you look around, and they really are. And I look over, and the guy that's just 12-stepped me and his wife are like, I'm like, okay. So I raised my hand and scratched my head, and that's all I did. And my dad happened to turn around just at that instant and look dead at me and turn back around. He got called on. We had a tag participation meeting for 30 minutes and a main speaker, and he called on me, and he got up, and he said this. He said, I noticed that my daughter is here tonight, and I saw her raise her hand, and I hope that she gets this way of life. And of all the Christmas presents in the world, that would be the best. And for just a small moment, I think my heart started to melt. The cold started to break, just a little bit. And I started this journey called Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a sponsor. My sponsor left AA, and I got arrested in AA. Even arrested in AA, people. Oh, I just love that. I forgot to pay things. It's like there's no computers in Oklahoma. Hot checks and tickets, and I'm leaving. It's like I left California, and you would think that I had never lived there before. It never existed. And I didn't, take care of the things, and I got arrested sober. My dad had a stroke. He was so mad at me. He was going to kill me, and of course he bailed me out, and I kept saying on the phone, I'm sober, I'm sober, I'm sober, and he goes, I don't give a good fuck. And so the jail lady walks by, this big jail lady, and she looked at me and goes, I kept saying, I'm sober, Dad, I'm sober, tell him I'm sober, Benoit, tell him I'm sober. And he goes, who cares? The lady walking by, I kept going, I'm sober, she goes, who cares? So I go, it's very important to be sober at my house when you call for bail money. Oh, he was so mad, and he would not, she came and brought the money, picked me up, yay, thank God the Al-Anons love us. I am so happy. They keep us alive long enough to get here. I swear they really do. And she took me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous immediately thereafter. I met him when I was about 5 years sober. I want to tell you guys, he is not in the program. He's not an alcoholic. He's not an Al-Anon. He's not normal anymore. I fixed that for him. And he always says, I used to be normal. I'm like, yeah, right. I said, no, honey. And one of the neat things that I learned how to date. I went on a date. We went out like 3 or 4 times, and my sponsor said, how's it going out on your date with this guy, Dave? And I said, I think we're just going to be friends. And she said, why? And I said, well, we've been out like 4 times. He didn't even kiss me goodnight. She goes, Sheila, that's dating. I go, what a concept. Wow. And he pays for things. Good Lord. He has a car and teeth. It was fabulous. He had a job. He was going to school. He was a prince. What can I say? It was so bizarre, and I learned how to do that, and I wanted to be a lady. I always wanted to be a lady. I didn't wear frilly dresses. I didn't even own a dress when I got sober. And I will always dress up for you at Alcoholics Anonymous. When I come behind this podium, I will always look like a lady that you've asked me to. You've taught me how to do that. I will always respect this podium by wearing a dress or a skirt, always, always, because you have saved my absolute life. And why would I want to be able to show my respect for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I will always do that. The women that I sponsor do the same thing. It's something my sponsor has passed on to me. And it's worked for many, many years this way. I don't think I need to louse it up. I don't think I need to change anything and have a better idea. And I want to always respect the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love this program just the very way it is. I met him, and we got married, and I made amends to my father. And one of the amends, I got pregnant right away after we were married, old fertile myrtle here. And I got pregnant, and I remember being upset. It was like we weren't ready to do that yet. And he called and he goes, well, what'd the doctor test say? And I said, well, I am. I said, I'm sorry. He goes, sorry, we're married. I go, God, I can call Dad. I was so excited. It was so different. It's like, wow. And I said, Dave, he was the very last to know with Brad. I said, could he be the very first to know besides us? Could he be the very first to know? Really, I made amends for this, direct amends. I sat down and made direct amends with my father. It wasn't this, well, I'm going to make a living amends. He sees I'm sober, good luck. I made direct amends for the wrongs, for the sleepless nights that I took from him. I was a thief. I was a thief. I stole his peace of mind. That's the worst thief of all. Franklin Williams used to say that, I believe. And it was. I remember when I heard Franklin Williams say that, I thought, oh gosh, I robbed him of his peace, and the other things. And I made the direct amends, but boy, this has been a great living amends. And he said, of course we can do that. And I called him up and I said, Daddy, and by this time he had moved back to California. And I said, Daddy, I'm going to have a baby. And I'm married and everything. He said, I know I was at your wedding, Sheila. And he said, oh, that's just great. He was so excited. And I said, you're the very, very first to know. And he knew. He knew what I was doing. He knew, and he loved me. We had this, I was pregnant I found out in my 7th month or my 6th month that I was pregnant, and I had twins. And one was a girl and one was a boy. And life, I just felt double blessed, just twice blessed. In my 7th month, something started going wrong with the babies, and the little girl got very sick. And you and me and God and Alcoholics Anonymous, we walked through it together. And I went to the doctor, and he said, something's wrong. This baby's getting sick, and there's nothing we can do. And they said, we got to concentrate on the healthy baby. The boy's doing well. And I just thought I was living in a nightmare. And so I had to go through this whole weekend. And it was an ice storm in Oklahoma, which is it really paralyzes the city. And my AA friends didn't want me alone through that weekend. And I was supposed to talk at my home group that Saturday night, and the speaker chairman called up and said, you know, you don't have to talk. I've heard what's going on with you, and you won't get the results till Monday, and you're going to a different doctor, and if you don't need to talk. And I said, well, let me think about it. Let me think about it. And my AA sponsor was starting to exit AA. I didn't really have a sponsor right there giving me direction. She was starting to leave AA. That's when I got pegged. My husband looks over at me and he said, you're supposed to talk Saturday night. And I said, yeah. And he said, I think you ought to do it. I think it'd be the best thing in the world for you. I looked at him, I thought, well, you've been listening a little too much around here. He said, I think that's exactly what you need to do. And he said, there's nothing you can do about what's going on right here, and I think that'll help you. He said, that's when you're your best. When you're helping somebody else, when you're going to your meetings and you haven't been able to be there. And I did that, and I walked through that. And on Monday, I went to the doctor, and he went to a specialist, and he said, I'm so sorry. He said, I'm so sorry she did not make it through the weekend. And my heart was so broken. I really wanted both those babies. And I felt so sad, and I just had to carry both of them until the baby was born, until Daniel was born. He was born healthy. He had some problems in the beginning, but nothing that stayed. It was just some breathing problems, and I didn't have to drink, and I didn't have to use, and I didn't have to go insane. And I didn't have to go into therapy for 14 years, and I didn't have to do any of that because you know what? You all have walked me through this. You all have showed me the way to get better. It's not that I didn't hurt and I wasn't sad. Let me tell you what. There were times I didn't want to pray. And I always pray on my knees every night. Every night I pray on my knees. That's one thing I've been consistent in. And what happened for me is I remember I came home from the doctor, and it was that night, and I was going to go to bed, and I thought, what's the use? It doesn't work anyway. That's a very dangerous place for an alcoholic to be in, a horribly dangerous place. And I remember the next day I had a terrible day, and I felt like something was missing, and something was. My prayer and meditation was missing. That was missing in my life. I pray, and I read things, and I think about God. And I start my day that way. I always have, and I was so cynical and angry, and I felt so hurt. And why can I never have what I want? Why can I never have, like, the best thing? Something always has to be kind of goofy about it. And, self-pity was all over me, and this girl started calling me, and she was new, and she'd come over, and they'd bring me meetings. I had to go on bed rest, and she's redheaded, crazed woman with those hair, and she was like, this other girl was sponsoring her, but she just, like, took a liking to me, and oh, my God, she had this hair, and she looked like Thing, she was crazy, and she was new, and I acted as if for the newcomer. I acted better than I felt for the newcomer because that's what you've told me to do. And I acted right when she was around. And she called me all the time, and I'd give her the go get 'em. And I needed that because they helped me feel better. And I'll tell you what, 2 weeks ago, I sat in her living room, and she's on bed rest because her baby, she's got too much blood pressure. And it is 10 years later, and she's having her first baby, and she's my sponsoree now. Isn't that neat? I said, where we were 10 years ago? You were in my living room, and you were helping me. And now I'm in your living room, and I'm helping you. Isn't that the neatest thing in the world? What gifts we get here. I'm going to tell you one more story, and then I'm going to let go. My dad got very, very, very sick. He got cancer, and he died in 3 months. I mean, he didn't feel good, and he always felt good, and he didn't feel good, and his shoulder started hurting. He went to the doctor, and they said... And it was in California. He lived in California, and they just said, I'm sorry, and he only had 3 months to live. We didn't know. We thought it was a little bit more, but he only lived 3 months. And I want to tell you, I grew to love my father so much. He was the best. And you gave me that gift. My father was not a perfect father, but he was perfect for me. For my road I had to walk, for my lessons, and for my life. We had 11 really great years together when I got sober. We had a wonderful, wonderful relationship. I think we had one fight in 11 years. I'm telling you, that's really a miracle. One fight in 11 minutes was a good time for us, And so when my dad died, a year before he died, we were going to the International. And we were at the Pacific group, and it was his AA birthday. And I happened to fly in early because it was his AA birthday. It was his 29th AA birthday, and I got to see Clancy give him his cake, and I got to see him take his birthday, and it was just, we had a little party for him. It was so special. I did not know that was my father's last AA birthday. He wasn't even sick. He wasn't even diagnosed yet. I'm so glad you taught me to go places and get in the car and shut up and just get there a little early, and so what if it's inconvenient? So what? My dad, we were driving home that night, and he said, I wish I'd gotten you braces. I said, what? He said, I really wish I'd gotten you braces. And I said, well, yeah, I kind of wish I had them too. I said, Dad, they're kind of on the list. I said, I'm going to get them. He said, you are? I said, yeah, I'm still going to get them. I said, it's on the list. It's like roof, braces, it's on that list you have in your house, groceries, braces, da-da-da, And he said, well, let me know and I'll help you. I said, really? He said, yeah, you always have those crooked old teeth and that sweet little face, and it's something that really bothers me I never did for you. My dad, a year later, died. A year later, he died. I did not know he would die. And I went and got braces. About 2 years later, I got braces. And I remember I walked outside the dentist's office, the orthodontist, and I walked outside and I looked up the sky and I go, I got my braces on. I'm showing him. In the car, some people around me. Look at the woman talking to the sky, honey. And I just laughed. And then all of a sudden I started thinking, I wonder if he can really see my braces. I wonder if he's in heaven. I wonder if there is heaven. If you ever get dark, this is only a glimpse of what I have up here 24/7, okay? Ugh, it's awful big. I hate this. And it's getting darker and lower and horrible, and oh my God. And so what happened was I thought, I'm gonna call somebody. I have a cell phone, and I thought I'll call somebody I sponsor. They're good for 15 minutes. Well, and true to her word, Brandy was great. She was, I go, how are you? Blah, 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 blah. It was great. I'm like, I'm out of me, yay. I'm out of this horrible dark place I'm at. This is bad. And I'm thinking really icky things, and I'm done. It's over. And 2 days later, I had committed to go to this women's step house, and it's a place where these women are in recovery, and we take a meeting in, and it's hard. They're like almost on their way to prison. It's a tough place, and we got lost, and we had never been there. It's our first time there, and we got lost, and we couldn't find the place. And it's out in the woods, and somebody said, remember they found the dead girl over by the trees? I'm like, that's nice, okay. The girls I sponsor talk about the darndest things at the worst time. I said, it's dark, and why don't we not talk about this right now? It's getting dark. And I said, let's talk about, happy things, And we are so lost. We kept finding the men's facility, and that's what our directions were toward, but we couldn't find the women's. And we kept thinking, sure, it's right around here somewhere. So they said, Sheila, we're 30 minutes late. And I said, what we need to do? We need to go back. I said, no, we're not going to leave. And she said, I can just call him tomorrow and tell him I'm sorry, we got lost, and we'll bring your meeting another time. I said, no. I said, let's go back to the men's facility, call over there, get directions, and then we'll go over there. And I said, we got to show up, at least show up. And we did. And we had 20 minutes left. And we were going to do step 2 out of the 12 and 12 and read and all that stuff. Well, there were 4 of us, and she said, you only have 20 minutes left. I said, you won't give us a whole hour. She goes, nope, we have things to do. These girls have to get ready for bed. I said, okay. Okay, that's their rules, and you have to respect that. So 5 of us, we did 5 minutes each on a little panel, what happened was like now. And for some reason, when it got to me, it was and the room was in a semicircle, and there were about 50 women deep. I'm not 50 women deep, but there were 50 women, and it was a semicircle, and we were up in front. And there were a lot of women in this place. And what happened was the lady, she said, do that, and we did. And it got to me, and I said, I got braces on this week. I got braces. And I said, and one of the things I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, if I'll trust God and clean house, that I can have anything I ever wanted. And I said, I didn't have straight teeth, and I never got braces as a kid. And my dad really wanted me to have them. But because you taught me how to suit up, show up, go to work, and do these things, I can have those things today. And you can have those things too. But you've got to be willing to take the action and do the deal. And I said, and then I said this, and I said, and I hoped he danced in heaven. And I'm still not sure. And I looked straight ahead, and all of a sudden this woman is sitting there, and I look at her, and I said, where did you get that T-shirt? Now, that's not how I share normally in meetings. I love your earrings. I don't do that in a meeting. I'm pretty formal. I don't do that kind of stuff in the middle of talking. And she looked around, and I said, you, right there, where did you get that T-shirt? She goes, out of the donation closet, I swear, And I said, stand up. And now the girls I sponsor and they sponsor are going, she's losing it, what's happening to her, what's wrong, hormones, something's wrong. And I said, stand up. And she didn't, and I saw the shirt. And I had to turn around, and I said, honey, you're wearing my father's plumbing shirt. And it was. And I said, not only was that not that he's been dead for 2 years at this point, I said that business has not been in business for 2 years, and when it was in Los Angeles, California, not Norman, Oklahoma. And everyone got very, very still. And Kara came up to me after the meeting was over. I couldn't talk anymore. I just sat down and said, thank you very much. And of course, it was just a really neat moment. And she came up to me and she said, Sheila, I think God's letting you know that your dad saw your braces. Oh, and I think so. I know so. And I feel so bad when I doubt my God. And God he loves me that much that he would want my. And I really believe that today. I mean, I just got such a visual over that. I really did. And I remember running home that night, getting on my knees. I'm sorry. I know. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you so much for the T-shirt. Oh, I love you. You know how you are with something really good. Thank you, God. Hate you, God. I hate you, God. I love you, God. I mean, he must be so sick of us, Because I am a psycho, we have visits in the car, But the neat thing that happened for me is that that I knew there was God beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I believe this, if there's people that we have loved in our lives here, or you've loved, and they've gone on to the great meeting in the sky, or they've died of alcoholism, or something has gone, someone you loved is left, and they're with God. I believe when we do the deal here and we help others and we do the things that we're supposed to do with our children and our lives and everything, I believe that God says, come, he has this big window, and he lets them come over to the window. He says, come here, look down there. They're all right. They're doing all right. And I think he allows that. I really think from time to time he allows that, and it makes us feel close to each other. Makes them feel like my dad's just gone ahead to the big meeting, and he's up there, and he's probably, it's Friday night, he's probably greeting somebody. And I miss him so much, and he told me to stay on the firing lines and help others, is what he told me. He said, stay on the firing line, Sheila, please. My mission's up, and I'm passing the baton to you. And that's what he said. I'm passing the baton to you. And that's a big deal. And of course I'll dress up, and of course I'll come to Maryland. I owe it to him. I owe it to you, and I owe it for my life. Those boys of mine have grown up. One's 10 years old and playing football, and it's about to make me nervous for heck. And tackle. And my oldest one, that little baby that was in the yellow pajamas, he's a senior in high school. And he's a good kid. And he plays baseball, and he's so cute. He's really good looking, and all these girls are always after him. It makes me very nervous. And he loves you. And, he's gone with me to bail you all out of jail. He goes places with me all the time. And I said, so you don't get Betty Crocker, get over it. You'll be fine. And people always say, does Alcoholics Anonymous affect your kids? I'm like, yeah, hello. Of course it does. My son can walk up to anybody and say hi. He helps other people. He wrote this thing in class and says, and it said your goals for the year. And it said to hold as many doors for as many people as I can. Say hi to 3 people that I don't know. Where did he get that? He got that from you. You gave that to me. You come in my home, you're with him. The girls I sponsor gave him a surprise 16th birthday party because they wanted to say thank you for your mom. Thank you for allowing us to have her. Thank you for all that you ever, that the times that we call and interrupt your dinner. Thank you. What a gift I have. He's a good kid. He's crazy. He's 18. I don't know what's going to happen now. Oh, God, we could unleash the devil at any time. I'm not under the delusion he's safe. He's just like me, which is a horrible thing to be. But if I hadn't gone the extra mile that day and done a little bit more, I would have missed it all. Thank you.